injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys of Hollis, Wright & Couch are here to serve you. With civil trial lawyer Josh Wright from the firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch and Alabama's 13 host David Lamb, the attorneys answer your tough legal questions straight ahead.
Hello and welcome into the attorneys. Appreciate so much you taking the time to join us this evening. For the next half hour, we have a panel of experts who are here to answer your questions. So here's how you get your questions to this panel. Throughout the program, you'll see ways for you to call, text, or email. That's your direct line to them. You get the questions to us, and I'll do my best to pass those along to our panel of experts, led once again by Josh Wright of the firm Hollis, Wright & Couch. Good to see you, sir.
Glad to be here to talk about some fun stuff today.
Yeah, we're talking property, huh?
Yep, property and property rights and how to make sure you've got clear title to property and a bunch of other topics. When our firm deals with issues of property rights and mortgages and loans and title and those types of things, we look to guys like Jonathan Raulston, who is with the Engel, Harrison, and Johansson firm, and he's a great resource to be able to answer these questions. He truly is an expert in this field and practices on a daily basis this kind of stuff, among other things that he does. So we're excited to have you on, and thank you for coming in here today to answer some questions for us.
Really excited to be here.
First of all, from a starting point, Jonathan,
sure.
Is the definition of what is property, is it more complex than maybe we think?
Yeah, it probably is more complex than what you think. Because if I were to ask you what is property, it's you say, sure, property is my camera or my car or my house, but how do you actually define what property is? It's a little bit tougher. I mean, it's basically can be, you know, the textbook definitions are things like it's the right to exclude others from possession of an item or place, or the right to use and enjoy something. But it's really a simple thing, and it's something that you deal with every day, but the definition is really not as straightforward.
Right. How can you prove that something is your property?
Well, you know, different pieces of property, you can prove it in different ways. I mean, receipts, for example, if you're, I mean, I love on this show, one of the good things I think we do is we give practical examples that add context to the topic. We're not just here talking about the topic of property in general today. Let's talk about examples.
Okay.
You walk out of a store. Somebody says you stole something. Well, how do you establish that you own that property? Well, receipt's a good example. Let's talk about owning a car, owning a house or real property. There are titles, deeds, and mortgages that are all applicable, that you all have to make sure that you've got handled appropriately without encumbrances to make sure that you have clear and clean title to a piece of property. So those are some of the ways, through deeds and mortgages and through actual receipts and whatnot, that you can prove and establish that you've got property. And there may be others I hadn't even thought of.
Yeah, but those are the main evidences of property. Have you ever heard the old saying, possession is 9/10 of the law? I think everybody's heard that. Right. Well, it's not literally true. But what it is useful for is to indicate that if without any other evidence that the person in possession of property is presumed to be the owner of that property. So if I say, I really like that jacket, that's a good looking jacket, it's my jacket. I'm pretty sure it is.
Right.
And you say, no, it's really not. It's mine. It's my jacket, I have it. And I'll say, well, do you have a receipt for it? Or do you have, any kind of evidence? Has somebody have a tape picture, showing that it's yours? Well, you don't have that. Right. You bought it, maybe if it was my suit 10 years ago, maybe, and you don't have that. But if it comes down to that, the fact that you possess it gives a presumption that it's yours.
Yeah. One of the questions we've got, I don't know how this would happen, but I bought a car. Why did I not receive a title?
Go ahead.
Well, if you bought a car and you paid cash money and you don't have a title, that might be an issue.
Right.
But probably not. Most of us don't do that. When you buy a car, you usually get financing through a bank, credit union, some other kind of organization. And when you do that, they take a lien in that car. Basically, they have a right to come and take possession, and they keep the title. So when you buy a car through the bank, the title goes to the bank, and they're listed as the lien holder. And if you may know or may not know, if you don't pay for that car, then the bank's got the right to come get it, take it back, and sell it to somebody else. When you pay your loan off, then you get your title back from the bank because you own it outright. But until that point that you're the outright owner, the bank has a lien on it, and they'll hold the title of that car.
That's right. And one of the important things you have to do when you buy a car, for example, just using this example, is to make sure that you're buying a car that has a clean title. You know, if somebody owns a car and has paid a car off and there's value in that car and you're going to buy it, and they have gone to a loan acceptance group and they have taken a $5,000 loan against the title of that car and they don't actually have the title, or they do have a copy of a title but there's an encumbrance on it, you don't want to buy that unless you've got a clean title.
Is clean title the same as clear title?
I think under the law, yeah, it basically is. Yeah. Whether it's, legal terms versus layman terms, same thing.
All right. Why is inspection important?
Gosh, inspection's important no matter what you're buying, because generally, especially if you're buying something from an individual, you're buying that as is, meaning you're taking it as it is, whether it's got faults or not. There's not generally a duty, except for certain exceptions in Alabama, for me to disclose that there's an issue with it. Like if you're buying my car, I don't have to say, you know, that battery's probably only got a couple months left on it, or those tires are getting awfully low. Now, if you ask me something specifically, when did you put this battery in it, and I say last week, and that's not true, then that's different. But if you don't ask about it, then I don't have an obligation to tell you. So you've got to inspect it, because once you buy it, it's yours. You buy it, ball tires, bad tire, battery, and all. It's the same thing, and especially more important with real property. If any of you bought a house, you've probably gotten a property inspection. They've gone out there and they've gotten under the house with flashlights, and they've gone up in the attic and they've looked all over that house, because they know when you buy that house, once the deed is signed and the check is passed hands, it's your house. And if there's a crack in the foundation, it's your problem. If the air conditioner is about to go out, it's your problem. So it's important that you do your inspection so that you know what it is you're getting yourself into.
Yeah. You used a term that I love whenever we clear up terminology here. You talked about real property. What's the difference between real and personal property?
A good question. Real property is basically land and anything affixed to it. A house, apartments, something like that. Land is real property. Right. And basically, everything else is personal property. A car is personal property. Your clothes are personal property. Your CD collection is personal property. Anything besides your house or land.
Okay. So when they say that's my you hear that, that's my personal property. That's
it may literally be.
It probably is.
Unless it's your house, right?
That's right. Now we know. Yeah, for sure. Well, let's take our first break of the evening. As we do so, I want to remind you of how you could join in this conversation. Call, text, email us. We'd love to hear from you. Easy for you to get in touch with us. Also easy to find Hollis, Wright & Couch. They are everywhere. Not only can you email them and check out their website, you can find them by searching Hollis, Wright & Couch on Facebook and Hollis_Wright on Twitter. Easy for you to communicate with them and keep up with what's going on at the firm. Stay tuned. The next segment of The Attorneys will be right back.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch, and thanks for watching The Attorneys on Alabama's 13. Now, we hope you, a friend, or a loved one never need legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple. Provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free, so if you have questions specific to this show or related to other civil legal matters, call, email, or text us to talk with one of our lawyers. You can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter to learn about important legal news that could affect you or your family. Or simply contact us by going to alabamas13.com and click on the Attorneys link. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and for watching The Attorneys right here on Alabama's 13.
Welcome back into The Attorneys. As we welcome you back, a reminder, love to hear from you. You can call, text, or email throughout the remainder of the program. That information will be on your screen. Gentlemen, as we went to break, there was a graphic about unclaimed property. First of all, how do you find out if you've got some? How do you get a hold of and get things that are rightfully yours?
Well, there's a simple website you can go to, which I think we added there, and I don't have it in front of me. Do you know?
I do have it, okay. Yeah. It's actually www.moneyquest, that's MoneyQuest www.alabama.gov.
Okay. All right. And that was on the graphic as well.
Yeah, and they can call, email, or text, and we'll give it to them.
Okay.
Without question. Yeah. You can go to that website, and you can plug in certain identifying information and determine whether or not there is some property that you are owed, that you have not received, and is being held for your benefit in pretty much every state that you've lived in.
Yeah. And how and why is that property there?
Fair question. Go ahead.
Okay. Why is it there? It's because somebody at some point in time was holding that property and they didn't know what to do with it. A good example that Andy was talking about during the break was trust account money. If you're a lawyer and you have money in your trust account and then you can't locate the person that is the rightful person to that money, your client or the beneficiary, after a certain period of time, you're required by law to pay that into the state. Happens with a lot of other things, money that's held by the clerk of court, tax refunds, a lot of things where somebody's holding money for somebody. At some point in time, if you can't locate them, you're required to pay that into the state, and the state holds it there.
Another good example is, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in the show, but if somebody dies without a will and certain monies are to pass what's called intestate, there's a state statute, it's a codified statute that defines who gets what. If you're not able to track down one of 6 heirs who has an interest in cash, in a CD, in a stock, whatever it may be, ultimately it's going to work its way to the state as being the responsibility or the right of somebody to claim. They may never claim it. What happens at that point, I'm not sure we're prepared to answer that today, but I'm sure there's a procedure for it at the end of the day. But it's held there for a long period of time. And the best way to do is just go search and determine whether or not you or a family member has got something that may have been unclaimed, that you never even recognized that you should have had in the first place.
And you just go to the website and they make it easy. Put in your name. And you'll
there's certain identifying information you've got to add, but at the end of the day, you can search. You can search using name.
Just really simple, like a minute.
Right.
And you'll find out.
We were talking earlier about titles and that whole process. How may someone request a duplicate title?
A duplicate title is pretty simple too. If you want a duplicate title to your car, there's a simple form you fill out. It's called an application for replacement title. You mail it to the State Department of Motor Vehicles with $15. Yeah. And they'll process that and send you a new title.
You'd be amazed at how easy it can sometimes become to lose a title too. You think it's just as simple as putting it in your glove box, but people get robbed. Yeah. Vehicles catch on fire, and there's a total loss. Well, you may need a title in order to prove to your insurance company that you owned it. So even though your vehicle's a total loss and you've got pictures of it sitting there in your driveway because your vehicle's burned down, you've got to go secure another title. We've had to do that in cases before. In product liability cases, to establish somebody truly had an ownership interest, sometimes you've got to do that. So it's something that's important to understand and know how to do. Calling the Department of Motor Vehicle is the easiest way to do it.
Okay. A question we have here. I have real property, but I do not have a deed. How odd is that?
Not that odd.
Yeah.
I don't think. I mean, a lot of people, if you've owned your property for more than 5 or 10 years, you may have gotten a deed, you may not know where it is.
Okay.
It's not that uncommon, and it's not that big a problem either, because all deeds are recorded with the judge of the probate in the county where the property is located. So if you need a copy of your deed, you can go down to the courthouse, to the probate's office, and do a search. There are people that will help you, or you can go to a lawyer or title company. But you can go down to the probate court, and with your name and basic information, you can search those records. If it's old enough, it may be in old, dusty books way back in the back of the probate office. But every title that's been recorded in Jefferson County for, probably 100 years is there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's one of the ways. For example, let's use Jefferson County. It's one of the ways to ensure that we know how property has transferred from person to person, family to family, where boundaries are, if they change, or in fact what encumbrances a piece of property may have. Somebody may have taken a partial mortgage out with a bank and not paid that off completely, and there was a foreclosure on that piece of property and somebody else has bought it. Now, if you're the next person to buy it after that, you're going to want to do an entire title search to determine if there are any encumbrances or if you were buying it free and what you called earlier clear as a title.
All right, another question here. Why are valuations of property important?
Valuations of property can be important for a lot of reasons. For real property, evaluation is going to be important because if you're going to a bank to finance it, they're going to require one. As a lot of people have found out recently in the last 2-3 years, with all that's going on in the mortgage industry, they've found a house they want to go buy. They go to the bank. They've got good credit. They go to buy the property. They get an appraisal, and the appraisal may be 70 or 80% of what it was just 4 or 5 years ago. Well, that's a big deal because the bank has to ensure that the property's worth at least as much as they're loaning you in order to be comfortable to make the loan. So if your valuation comes back low, you may not be able to buy the property. So that's a big deal. It's also important to get valuations for other items for a lot of reasons. Insurance is a big reason. You know, how much your house is worth is important for your property insurance because if it burns down, you want to make sure you get the fair value for that house.
And explain this too, because I think it's important. The tax assessor's value may not actually be nearly consistent with the value that you place on your house or that you think you can sell it for.
Right, rarely is. They do those. The tax assessor doesn't go out and look at your individual house. He has a formula based on past sales and the neighborhood and square footage. It's really a pretty rough estimate, and usually they err on the side of being, you know, lower than what you would value your property for and you would sell it for. So
generally, the tax assessor never even comes in your house.
No.
And in fact, you can refuse to allow the tax assessor to come in your house if you desire to. It may have an impact on your valuation, but at the end of the day, the tax assessor comes around. I'm not sure if it's on a yearly basis or a biannually basis. I'm not sure how they do that, but they do value your property generally from what Jonathan's mentioned. Right. Those different things. So those are important things to know, though.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. More on this topic of conversation, dealing with property, and kind of answering some of the questions that a lot of you all have. Time left for you to get your question to us. Go ahead and do that. Call, text, or email that info in, or pass it on to our panel of experts. A couple of reminders: Facebook, search Hollis, Wright and Couch there. Twitter, Hollis_Wright. Stay tuned. The final segment of The Attorneys coming your way next.
From all of us at the law firm of Hollis, Wright and Couch, we're glad to have you here with us every Sunday night on Alabama's 13. This week we're discussing property issues. Now, there are 2 red flags that you should look for when you're purchasing property. First, when you purchase property, you'll receive a title if it's a car or a deed if it's a home. That is, unless you have a loan or a mortgage on the property that you purchase. If you suspect that you were supposed to receive a title, deed, or some other form of documentation of ownership, but you didn't, you should contact the seller. If that doesn't work, consult an attorney right away. Second, if you purchased something, but it was not what you bargained for, you may want to contact the seller to discuss the issue or consult with an attorney. If you feel you're the victim of fraud, or if the other party breached the sales contract you signed, get an attorney quickly to protect your rights. Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis, Wright and Couch want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys right here on Alabama's 13.
I think we've heard that before. You got to have that will if you want to make sure that who you want to end up with your stuff gets it there for sure. Final segment of The Attorneys. Appreciate you sticking around and joining us on this conversation tonight for the next few minutes. We've got a few minutes left. Still time for you to get your questions into us. Call, text, or email those to us. Let me ask you a question about some terminology here. Sometimes this terminology trips me up. All right, we saw a little graphic about a quit claim. Quit claim deed versus warranty deed?
Hugely different.
Okay, help me.
Hugely different. These are deeds for conveying real property, which is houses, land.
Okay.
A quit claim deed says that whatever interest I may have in this property, I'm going to give that to you. I may own it outright. I may own it with mortgages and liens. I may own it as co-owners with my brother. I may own an 1/8 interest in the property, or I may not have any interest in the property at all.
Right.
A quitclaim deed just says that whatever interest I happen to have is yours, but it doesn't give you a warm and fuzzy because it doesn't really give you any assurances. What you usually get when you buy a house is a general warranty deed.
Okay.
And that is like your gold standard of deeds. We should have a little seal on it because that's what you want. Because the general warranty deed says that I'm warranting that I own this property, that I'm the proper owner, and you go back and title, that there's nobody else who has a challenge to my title, and that I'll warrant that I'm the owner and that I own it outright, and I have the right to convey it to you so that you'll be the absolute owner of the property when you obtain the property.
Now, if that's the gold standard,
yes.
Why would anyone ever get the other one?
Well, things are sometimes complicated. Sometimes there are issues about a property. Sometimes people go into it knowing that there's a dispute about who owns the property, and they'll say, I know there's a dispute, but I'm willing to take that risk, and I'll just take whatever interest you have. Sometimes it's just, unfortunately, out of ignorance.
Yeah.
If you don't know any better.
I'll give you another example that is important. There's something called a sheriff's deed. Sheriff's deed can be used under circumstances where a sheriff is used to collect a debt that somebody owes. If you have been found liable in a civil suit and do not have the resources to pay it, but have real property, have a home, for example, it can be sold. If you owe taxes and you refuse to pay those taxes, and through the court system, there has been, you own some value in your property, a sheriff deed could be used in order to collect a debt. So there are literally 20, 30 different types of deeds that would be applicable we could probably talk about, but the ones that we've just talked about are probably, and foreclosure deeds would need to be included. Those are probably the top 3 to 4 that are probably used more on a daily basis than just about anything.
Yeah, the one you might want to mention is that with all the foreclosures that are going on right now, if you're buying a foreclosed property, a bank's probably going to give you a statutory warranty deed. It's just almost a general warranty deed, but they don't go back and say, since we took it at foreclosure, we know that we're the owner and that we haven't done anything, we haven't sold it to anybody else. If you get a title policy and you're represented, you'll be fine taking one of those deeds. It's not quite as good as a general warranty, but that's all that the bank can give you at a foreclosed property. So you may see that term, but don't be too afraid of that.
Jonathan raises a good point too. With all the foreclosures in today's world, lots of folks are out there buying foreclosed properties at absolute auctions and auctions that have limits on them. Make sure if you do that, consult with counsel. Make sure that you've got somebody that is doing a proper title search to make sure what you're buying is actually free and clear of any potential encumbrances. That's very important. You don't want to spend the time, the effort, and potentially the money in buying something that's not free and clear.
Okay, another question we have, what happens to my property when I die?
That's a great question. We probably could do an entire show on it. In general terms, and Jonathan and I can both kind of answer this, but in general terms, you either die with a will or without a will.
Okay.
If you die with a will, you're kind of directing, that's the document that directs where your property, resources, and assets are going to go. If you die without one, the state has been wise enough, the legislature has been wise enough to create a series of statutes that identify and distribute money in what's called the concept of intestate, which is if you die without a will. And there are certain requirements. I'll give you just a couple, and then I'll let Jonathan answer a little bit about it. If, for example, you die and you have a surviving spouse and biologic children with that surviving spouse, and that's it. So you got 2 kids with that spouse that you're married to for 30 years, and your kids are, in their teens. The law will dictate that the first $50,000 of your estate goes to the surviving spouse. The remainder is split equally between your surviving spouse, and then the other half goes to your children, and they divide it. All right? If you die and you don't have all biologic children, but you have stepchildren, for example, the first $50,000 does not go to that surviving spouse. It's split equally between the surviving spouse and the other children, including those that are not the biologic children. And so it's a good example. We could really underscore this point here. Die with a will. So you are in control of your own fate. And we've had many shows on the issue of wills and estates. Don't need to get into that, but you can get a will done for a very cheap amount of money with limited resources, and it's smart to have one. But the law will dictate, and the statutes dictate where the property goes.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We talked a little bit about trying to reclaim property. I would suspect that one of the most significant and important times when resources and assets make their way to the state is through that process right there.
Yeah. Real quick, time for our final thought of the day. So for you, kind of as you close things out, what do you want to be sure and leave the folks with? Oh,
gosh, yes. Don't die without a will. Because you can have them done inexpensively, and if you don't have the means to even afford a will, there are several pro bono clinics that are put on throughout the year by lawyers, where they will, for people who don't have the income to pay for a will, they will help you with a will. That's really important. Always get an inspection before you buy a property. Inspect it, make sure you know what you're doing. One thing I would really encourage you to do if you're buying real property, you're buying a house, is to get a survey of that property. So, because deeds control what's passed, and that's by a legal description, and it may be one of these. Have you ever heard of a meets and bounds description? It's a description. You're just sketching it out. If you don't have a survey, you don't have any way to know that what you think you're buying is what you're really buying. I would think that's money well spent on any transaction.
Very quickly. Get counsel if you've got questions about whether you're buying a piece of property that is unencumbered, meaning it does not have some restriction on it or some loan against it, or somebody has sold off a portion of the property. And the other thing is this: make sure at the end of the day, make sure that you've got your deeds and your mortgages in order, in the right place, with your lawyer, in your safety deposit box somewhere else. So if you've got to have them to prove something,
get to it. Great stuff, gentlemen. Thanks so much, and thank you for being with us as well. Here's how you can contact the firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch even after the program is over. Find them also Facebook, search Hollis, Wright & Couch there, and Twitter, Hollis_Wright. We appreciate your time. We'll see you next time here on The Attorneys.